Hello and welcome to another Doctor's Assistant Mum video. Today I'm doing a Doctor Who review of one of the classic series Doctor Who episodes. The last one that I did was Doctor Who The Mutants, quite some time ago now. But yeah, so that was a third Doctor story. I'd gone over my playlist of episodes that I had reviewed on the channel thus far and noticed that although Tom Baker is my favourite Doctor, I don't have much of his era reviewed on the channel, so it gave me a brilliant excuse to rewatch one that I've watched countless times, which, to be fair, is quite a common thing with a lot of Tom's era, but what are we going to say? Yeah, because I originally did review this on the channel, although it was quite some time ago to such a degree that I didn't like both how I reviewed it, the video, just my voice in it, all manner of just different elements and things that made it worthwhile just deleting it at that point. So yeah, I adore this story, by the way, spoiler alert, but I'll go through the packaging first and all the, the packaging first, and then talk about why I like the story so much and whatnot. So yeah, first of all, we have Tom there, and almost said Louise Jameson, Lalla Ward there, Jagaroff, the Scaroff, the Jagaroff even, and then the sort of machine thing here, really nice sort of Paris and the TARDIS there, and 2-disc thing, PG, Doctor Who, sort of 1996 TV movie one, City of Death there. Same sort of stuff on the spine. Oh, they've also got obviously the Tom Baker years, 1974 and 1981. The Tom there, City of Death, same sort of stuff. 2 Entertainment, BBC, Doctor Who, all that funky jazz. Special features galore, running time, the bio of the story, as well as the strip of different stills from the episode as well. Then you've got the writer's notes, and then the 2 discs as well, which have got nice printed stuff that's not too dissimilar to the front of the cover, even. Alright, so yeah, City of Death, it's the first Doctor Who episode to be filmed abroad, and that it also probably helped that by Part 4, the main competitor to BBC at the time were ITV, and still are really, but somewhat, but basically they were on strike that week, so City of Death Part 4 has one of the most highest rated viewed Doctor Who episodes of all time, with 16.1 million, I think it was, views, which is insane. I think what works really well here is that just Douglas Adams, though, really. I mean, it probably helps that in season 17, which this is the second episode of season 17, you've got new companion, you've got, I think this is the Graham Williams era as well, you've got Douglas Adams being a script editor as well as, so he's overseeing and editing scripts for season 17, as well as he wrote quite a few, and maybe I think it was the season before season 17, season 16, the Key to Time series that he wrote, Pirate Planet as well. So yeah, I mean, the last thing that I can think of with the Douglas Adams thing is that it's kind of funny, it's like it all goes full circle, as it were, because as my friend Michael said, the Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy thing, he got the idea whilst he was in France and or Paris maybe, and that, so, you know, and this one's set in France and or Paris, so yeah, that's kind of funny, how everything goes back in a loop, as it were. And then with the Douglas Adams thing, you know, you've just got the humour galore. If anything, there's a little bit too much for my liking with the Duggan character, and that, like, the gag and or shtick, for lack of a better term, is that he likes punching people, which is fine, and I'm fine with that, but the way they wrap up the story is him literally doing that, which is a bit annoying. Part 3 is probably the weakest-ish sort of story, but what's odd, though, is that a major criticism that I seem to sometimes have with other classic Doctor Who stories, or just other stories that take on the four-part format in the classic series. So whether it's Big Finish stuff, or which it usually is with Big Finish, or a lot of the classic series generally have four-part stories, is that sometimes writers, and in the case of Douglas Adams, I think he did this here, but the difference is with a lot of other four-part stories is that sometimes they have lots of different concepts and ideas and story threads, but the difference is they don't go anywhere, or they fall flat because of the restriction of the time. Like, even though it's 4 parts, which is a lot more than the 45 minutes Doctor Who writers have now, and that in the modern series, there is still some sort of level of constraint there. Clearly, if you've got, like, 3, 4, or 2 main ideas and then 2 sort of subplots, it's quite a lot to cram in. Whereas with this Douglas Adams script, it is insanely sort of well balanced. Everything seems to work really well and gel really well, even though you've got lots of different story strands and or characters doing different things, but it all sort of intertwines and interweaves really well. And I think you get a lot of, for lack of a better term, timey-wimey sort of paradoxical stuff. But you've also, if you're not interested in that aspect of the story, you've kind of almost got like a James Bond spy espionage sort of story through parts 1 and 2, and then it sort of, there is obviously still that timey-wimey stuff. It is Doctor Who after all, but that doesn't sort of come into play and or point of focus until parts 3 and 4. So, and I really like that stuff, but I think it's the fact that they do both is why I like the story so much, and Tom just is phenomenal in this story, just being absolutely bonkers and zany and off the walls, like a kid with ADHD and that. But, like the line of the 2 villain type characters saying, oh well, no one's as stupid as he is, or as he is coming across, sort of thing, and that no one can be as stupid as him, or whatever, and that, and brilliant lines like, ooh, no, what was it? I've forgotten the line now, actually, but yeah, and the music's actually surprisingly good with the bit on the train. Whenever I'm on the train, I'm just there, like, thinking about this music, actually, the sort of music, and that, and then, brilliant shots of Paris and them lot running around the place there. They can't cross the road for toffee, but still, and the time loop, like, Romano, I think we're in a time loop type thing, always, still now kind of fascinates me, and that, the fact that, like, like, they would notice it as well, because they're, like, Time Lords and or time sensitive, so they notice the time skip and that, and stuff. I just love how it plays with time and that so well, and yet still has a lot of comedy, and it's all balanced fairly well. As I say, the Duggan thing grated on me a bit, and as I say, I don't particularly care for how he wrapped up the story, like, with the punch thing and that. I just felt like that was a bit of a cop-out, but I mean, but then again, at that point you've almost written yourself into a corner, like, how the hell do you actually wrap up the story? The villain at first is very James Bond-esque, so that's really cool. Like, the actor who plays that villain is phenomenal. I can't remember his name, but he's phenomenal. The direction's really good. Romana, surprisingly enough, has quite a lot to do in this as well, and if anything is not overused, but it is actually used really well. And that, as I say, Tom's phenomenal here as usual. The scientist guy just gets killed off, and I've never really liked the woman either, or the scientisty dude. I guess they're 2 characters who fall a bit flat for me. Like, I think they're a bit too sort of, well, the scientist guy is a bit too sort of stupid, even though he's a scientist, which is a bit odd, really. And then, yeah, I mean, as I say, they get some decent shots of Paris. I have to admit, it's a bit odd that it's mainly parts 1 and 2 that get quite a bit of stuff with Paris, but then again, you could argue, well, even though they've got Paris and or are abroad and in France, they don't want to just have it all set there, because there is a budget, of course. So But that's another thing. Most of the set design and or stuff indoors of sorts, or set design of things such as the basement-y bit with the contraption and machinery thing, and the past with the Leonardo da Vinci sort of thing, or the sort of guy who made the Mona Lisa and that, and the bit at the beginning and at the end of the story of the Scaroff's ship and that, and the beginning of the Earth before it's fully formed and all that looked really good. And I mean, yeah, sure, it's not the most, some of those aren't the most complex of set designs to make, but even so, they hold up well, and they seamlessly they're seamlessly integrated into the rest of the story, even though the rest of the story is a lot more sort of shot on location and that, and that, like, it could easily be quite sort of jarring, or the set design, if it's slightly off or quite lower quality, then you'd just yearn for them to be on the location and that, and in Paris and that. But everything seems to weave really well in terms of like set design and characters and whatnot and that, and it's paced fairly well. But as I say, I think part 3 for me is a bit of an exposition dump, but then again, like, they spread out the exposition fairly well and that. But yeah, because this Scaroff of the Jaggeroff has 12 different versions of himself and that, and I think it was Cyberleader 1010 in a recent Who Talks about villains. He did like a podcast called Who Talks, and he was talking about the villains, and one of them was Scaroff of the Jaggeroff. And one thing he pointed out, which was really interesting, was that he's one of the few villains who has clear motives, and you can see and almost sympathise with why he would want to do what he's doing, and that. So, which I guess is a rarity in the classic series, and for that reason, he is definitely one of the better villains easily, and that in the classic series and that. So yeah, I mean, his motives are clear, so you either empathise with him or you really understand why he's doing it, and therefore sort of dislike him because it's so clear that he's obviously a bad guy, and that, or clear that what the outcome of what he wants to do is bad, although why he wants to do it is good, so. And that, and as I say, I think that's a rarity in the classic series, somewhat. There's only a few deaths in this story, but then again, I think that's because, obviously, if they had lots of deaths, that would sort of counterbalance, and, not even counterbalance, but clash with the humorous, over-the-top humorous nature of not over the top, but the humorous nature of this story. I think this is as humorous as Doctor Who should go, really. I think if it went any more humorous, then it would be a bit too silly. I can just about let this one slide, because then again, though, you've got Tom's Doctor as well. Like, I can't imagine this episode working with, let's say, Peter Davison or Colin, and that, maybe with Sylvester, but not with either of those two Doctors. Maybe even Colin, but definitely not Peter, and that, or say even John Pertwee. Like, don't get me wrong, they're both phenomenal actors, and they were both phenomenal in the role, but this definitely is suited to Tom's Doctor, if not a few of the other Doctors here and there. But still, overall, I'd give this one a 10 out of 10. It's a must-watch if you're any bit the fan of Douglas Adams, the Fourth Doctor, and that, as well. It probably helps that you've got a relatively new companion as well, because this is a second story. So that being said, she does have more than enough stuff to do. Duggan probably is the least interesting and or sort of involved character in the story. If anything, he just consistently asks questions and they never really get answered, and sometimes I feel like they might be questions that some audience members may have been asking, but then I guess they get left behind, unfortunately. But yeah, a 10 out of 10 story. It's a phenomenal one. I adore this story, and I've always really liked it. So yeah, a must watch. Thanks for watching. Comment, rate, and subscribe.